Y'all gather around. My name is Granny Washington, and I'm gonna tell y'all some ghost stories about some ghosts that used to haunt the family graveyard at the Wessington Plantation. It was a stormy night, kind of like today, and a full moon, and I was walking past the graveyard, and I noticed a heavy fog over yonder in the graveyard, and felt like I heard some people walking around too. Of course, now I didn't pay no mind. Next morning, Granville, Irene, and some of the others from around the house said they saw that same heavy fog over yonder in the graveyard, and it appeared to be moving in between the graves, and they thought they heard some voices too. Well, next evening, I'm on my way home from work, and I hear a voice says, clear as day to me, "You think I'm people, don't you?" He said it over and over and over again. Then he began to moan. Ooh, ooh, ooh. Now y'all look at me. Y'all know I ain't scared. So I march over there to that graveyard, and as soon as I step foot in the gate, I see a ghost, and he stood about 10 feet tall. He said, "Think I'm people, don't you?" I looked at him, and I reached down into the bottom, and I grabbed him, and I turned him over. I said, "I know you people now. Get down off those stilts and get out of here. Don't you ever come back." Whoever it was that was on those stilts, he fell down, ran away, and we never saw that ghost in the graveyard. Yes, sir, that ghost never came back. Then, there was another night. It was Halloween night. And I was headed from the big house, and all the children were going to come to my house that night because they knew I had all kinds of desserts that we hadn't paid for at the big house. Of course, now, those children always wanted me to tell those ghost stories. I said, "Not tonight, Jerry." But this is what happened. I was on my way home, and I had all kinds of cakes and pies that I had bought from the big house in this nice basket. So I walk up to in my yard, and I step foot in my gate, and I see this big old pair of red eyes just staring at me. I thought, it's got to be a animal of some sort. But it didn't move, and it didn't make no sound. So I said, "Get on out of here. You just trying to scare me." Things still didn't move. So I got curious. I said, "Oh, walk up to the gate. I look at the eyes. And then I take my 2 fingers and I jam it. And that thing got scared, and I got scared, and I dropped my basket, and I ran in the house, and I said, "Woo, children, I left that basket outside, and y'all can go out there and look for it if you want to, but you're going to have to do it without me." Of course, now, those children didn't go back out there looking for that basket. They stayed inside. We were all scared, and we spent the night together. And there's one more story I can tell you before I ask to go. It's another night after a prayer meeting. I was walking past the graveyard, and I look over, and I see this man on a horse, and he was dressed in all buckskin. He was wearing a coonskin cap. Now, this wasn't no ordinary man by any means, and it wasn't no ordinary horse either. You want to know how I know? This man didn't have no head. No head at all, and the horse didn't have no head either. Well, by the time I figured out this was the case, I said, "Whew, this ain't no time for me to be lingering around. I better make my way on back home." So, as I'm turning down the lane, I'm just striding, and I look up ahead, and there's that same headless man on that same got to be a Hank or a booger for sure. Then he started to wave his right hand at me like he wanted something, but of course, I didn't know what that was. Then, I remember a story that my grandfather used to tell me when I was little. You see, it was the story of this white long hunter that came to these parts many, many years ago when the Creek Indians considered the Washington plantation their own private hunting ground. And anybody that came to, through, or near that land, the Creeks considered trespassers. And see, Creeks didn't take two kinds of no trespassers, no such thing. So, one evening, they caught this long hunter down by Suffolk Creek, about a mile from the plantation. And after they got through sawing and working on him with their axes and their knives, they took him and they tied him up to a tree. And they left him there. Now, some of his fellow traveling companions who were also long hunters, they came through the area and they saw his body tied up to that tree. When they saw it, they noticed his head was missing and the horse's head was missing too. That spooked them, so they left that body tied up to that tree. Not too long after, the Cherokees came through, who also at that time considered the Washington plantation their own private hunting ground. They took that body and they cast a spell on it for the long hunter to hunt the creeks every full moon and scatter. Now eventually, both tribes of Indians traveled west to the Trail of Tears, left the area. You do, don't you? Left the area, left that lonely long hunter to search for the creeks who were no longer there. So I walked up and I said to the headless man on the headless horse, "Is there anything I can do for you, Mr. Long Hunter, sir?" Of course, now, he didn't say nothing to me. But I remember my grandfather telling me that the only way for a long hunter to get his rightful rights is to take him back to the place where he died, which was the banks of the Suffolk Creek. So I said, "Come on, Mr. Long Hunter, sir." Of course, now he got on this horse and he followed me. Now, I was saying the Lord's Prayer the entire way. So we get there. Long hunter and his horse, they're riding up and down and up and down and up and down the banks. Then all of a sudden, a bright light appeared, and out of that light came Indian ghosts. The headless long hunter came to attention on his horse, and he rides across the bank and he stops. He jumps down off his horse and he begins to dig, 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 dig. And up comes a skull. And he's waving it at me. And then he takes it and he sits it on top of his body. At that moment, the long hunter, the headless horse, and the Indian ghost all disappeared into thin air.